The battered taxi turned onto a dirt road the GPS didn't recognize. The wipers shrieked. A dry, desperate sound against the glass. A broken rhythm, useless against the monsoon rain tearing at the night. Priya tightened the thin silk shawl around her shoulders, but the chill didn't come from outside. It crept from within. The air in the cab was heavy, a suffocating mixture of diesel fuel, musty cardamom ground into the floor mats, and something else. A cloying, sweet stench she couldn't place, like lilies. Forgotten in stagnant water. Rohan, her husband, sat beside her, utterly oblivious. He was adjusting his silk tie for the 10th time, eyes glued to the dead screen of his phone. Its weak light cast his face in shadow, highlighting a wired, tense excitement. You see, Priya, Haveli Suryagarh, Mr. Kulkarni doesn't just see anyone. This is an honor, a life-changing opportunity. Priya nodded, a numb gesture. Her throat tightened. An honor. That's why they had driven 6 hours out of Jaipur, through torrential rain, deep into the remote countryside where old forts rotted in the dark like the skeletons of dead gods. An hanur, or a bizarre arrangement. The invitation had been delivered to their hotel by a courier, not an email or a call. Thick cardstock, its gold trim tarnished, inscribed only with dinner. 7 o'clock, and an almost illegible address. She'd felt it then. The wrongness, a feeling like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice into her chest. The taxi jerked to a halt. Brakes screaming. Ahead of them, through the gray sheet of rain, stood massive iron gates. They weren't just old, they were ancient, as if forged from shadow itself. The bars twisted like petrified serpents, woven together in menacing silence. And the smell, it hit her the moment Rohan opened the car door. So strong she rotting lilies. This time, it was laced with a sharp, metallic tang. Distinct, like old pennies held in the mouth. Priya coughed, trying to force the stench from her sinuses. A gatekeeper, a chakaidar, detached himself from the shadow of the stone wall. He carried no umbrella. Rain streamed down his expressionless face, a mask of waterlogged leather. His dark moss-green uniform clung to him. He spoke no word. He just silently pulled one side of the gate open, just enough for 2 people to slip through. The metal shrieked, a tortured, strangling sound. Rohan charged ahead, pulling Priya by the hand. Hurry, we're late. The instant Priya's heel crossed the threshold, the gates slammed shut behind them. A heavy, absolute clang. And then, silence. Not the peaceful silence of the countryside. This was the silence of a tomb. A thick, heavy silence that devoured all sound. The rain, the insects, the taxi engine driving away. All of it gone. Swallowed. Priya felt her ears pop. They were standing in a wide, flagstone courtyard. The Haveli loomed over them, a massive black shape swallowing the last of the twilight. Not a single light burned on its facade. The chakaidar was already at the main door. Somehow, he had moved without making a sound. He gestured with a tilt of his chin toward the massive, carved wooden doors. Priya gripped Rohan's arm. Rohan, I don't like this place. Please, let's go back. Her voice sounded small, frail in the crushing stillness. Rohan laughed, but the sound was dry. Don't be ridiculous, Priya. It's just an old house. Kulkarni is famously eccentric. Just try to make a good impression, for us. He pulled his arm free and pushed the door himself. It swung open in total silence, as if it had no hinges, or was lubricated with some oil. not of this world. Inside was a long corridor. Instead of electric lights, hundreds of terracotta dais lined the walls. Their sickly jaundiced lights danced, casting impossibly long shadows. The shadows didn't just stretch, they twisted. They clung to the vaulted ceiling like living things, convulsing with every flicker of the flames. The air inside was even heavier. The metallic, floral, rot now mingled with the smell of spices. Not cooking spices, old spices, cardamom, saffron, clove, the smell of a pantry sealed for a century. Welcome, a voice rasped from the end of the hall. It was thin, dry as parchment. The Chakaidar was already there, standing under a dark archway. Priya hadn't seen him pass them. Mr. Kulkarni is waiting. He led them down the corridor, his juddy slippers making no sound on the marble floor. Priya felt the soles of her shoes give, just slightly, a tacky feeling, as if walking on a thin, dried layer of honey. She glanced down. The candlelight wasn't bright enough, but she could see the floor wasn't entirely clean. It had a thin, gleaming film. They reached a large, vaulted chamber, the ceiling so high it was lost in darkness. And there, in the center, was a long, black teak dining table. It was set, Priya counted, 12 chairs. 10 guests were already seated, motionless, and 2 empty chairs in the middle, clearly for them. Please. The dry voice spoke again. Priya looked around. There was no one but the Chowkidar standing in a dark corner, his face obscured. The 10 guests. They sat unnaturally straight, rigid. They wore expensive silk saris, but the colors seemed faded, as if water damaged. They were not talking, not a whisper. They just stared at the empty silver thali plates in front of them. Rohan, seeming to not notice the strangeness, or choosing to ignore it, pulled out a chair for Priya. "Thank you," he said loudly into the void. No one answered. No one looked up. Priya sat. The velvet chair felt damp. She shivered. Across from her, an older woman sat, heavy with gold jewelry. She smiled at Priya, a tight, mechanical smile that only moved her lips. Her eyes were utterly blank, like 2 black onyx stones, reflecting the candlelight but holding none of its warmth. "Shall we begin?" Rohan cleared his throat, trying to break the oppressive silence. At that exact moment, the servers emerged. They appeared from dark doorways. Priya hadn't noticed. They didn't walk. They glided in perfect, unsettling unison. All wore the same moss green uniforms as the Chowkidar, and all kept their heads bowed, their faces impossible to see. They began to serve. The food, small silver bowls, were placed on each thali. The aroma that rose was thick. It was spice, but distorted, wrong. The dal makhani was suspiciously dark. No, it was black, a thick, strangely oily black. The palak paneya was a sickly gray-green, not the vibrant green of spinach, and the rogan, Josh, its dark red sauce, was congealed, clinging to the meat in odd clumps. Finally, a server placed a stack of roti in the center of the table. Rohan rubbed his hands. Wonderful. Wonderful. I'm starving. He tore off a piece of roti, dipped it in the black dal, and put it in his mouth. Delicious, he said, but his eyes narrowed slightly, a little rich. The other guests began to eat. Their movements were simultaneous, stiff, like puppets on a string. The only sound in the room was the scrape of silver cutlery on silver plates, a sharp, cold sound, metal on metal. Priya was paralyzed. That smell, the metallic smell, it was rising from her own plate. She picked up a piece of roti. It was not warm. It was cold as stone. And when she tore it, it was unusually tough, like rubber. She looked up at Rohan. He was eating ravenously. He smiled at the man next to him, trying to start a conversation about the stock market. The man just nodded, chewing mechanically, his eyes never blinking, black sauce dribbling down his chin. "Eat, madam," the dry voice whispered, seemingly right in her ear. Priya flinched. No one was there. She looked at the woman opposite her. The woman had finished her dal. A dark smear of it stained the corner of her mouth. Priya's stomach clenched. She couldn't. She had to get out of here. "I'm sorry," she whispered to Rohan, trying to keep her voice steady. "I need to use the restroom." Rohan waved her away, annoyed at the interruption. "Fine, just be quick. Don't be rude." Priya stood. Instantly, all 10 guests stopped eating. 10 heads swiveled in unison. 10 pairs of empty, soulless eyes locked onto her. The silence grew heavier, as if the air had been sucked from the room. The scraping of metal stopped. "I'll be right back," Priya stammered. She turned and walked quickly toward the candlelit corridor. She didn't know where the restroom was. She didn't care. She just needed an excuse to leave that table. She hurried down the hall, her heart hammering against her ribs. The floor was still tacky beneath her shoes. She had to convince Rohan to leave. Now, a sound. It came from a slightly open door to her right. Not a voice, a rustling, and a chewing. A wet, smacking, chewing sound. Curious and terrified, Priya crept closer. She pushed the door gently. It wasn't a restroom. It was the kitchen, a huge, old-world kitchen with copper hooks hanging from the ceiling. There were no candles, only a cold, blue-green light from a massive stone oven in the corner. The smell in here was overwhelming. The rot and metal were so strong, she gagged, covering her nose, and she saw them. The servers, they weren't preparing food. They were eating. They were clustered around a large stone table, heads bowed, scooping food from large platters with their hands, shoving it into their mouths. Ravenously, the wet chewing echoed in the room. One of them looked up, as if sensing her. Priya held her breath. In the pale, greenish light, she saw his face. He had no eyes, only two empty, weeping, and his mouth was sewn shut with thick, rough, black thread. The thread pulled the skin taut, puckering the lips. But somehow, he was still chewing. A dark fluid seeped from between the stitches, dribbling down his chin and dripping onto the floor. Priya choked back a scream. She stumbled backward, bumping a shelf. A copper pot crashed to the stone floor, a deafening, echoing clang. In the kitchen, all movement stopped. In that one deathly silent moment, Priya turned and ran. She fled back down the corridor, her own footsteps frantic, tacky slaps on the floor. She didn't care about Rohan anymore. She just wanted out. She burst into the dining hall. "Rohan, we have to," she froze. Rohan was not there. Their 2 chairs were empty, and the 10 other guests were gone. The table was pristine. Not a crumb of food, not a drop of sauce. 12 gleaming silver thalas, empty, sat in perfect order, as if the dinner had never taken place. "Rohan," she called, her voice cracking with panic. Are you looking for your husband, madam? The dry voice rasped. This time, it came from the head of the table, the part that had been lost in shadow. A figure slowly rose. The darkness seemed to cling to him, reluctant to let go. He was unnaturally tall and skeletal. He wore an old-fashioned, jet-black achkon. Who are you? Priya backed away. Where is Mr. I am Kulkarni, the shadow answered. He drifted from the darkness. He did not walk. He glided, his black achkon undisturbed. The candlelight hit his face. His face was a sheet of taut, ash-gray skin, like old parchment. His eyes were bottomless pits that reflected no light, and he had no lips. Only a horizontal slash where yellowed, sharp teeth showed through. Your husband is an ambitious man, Kulkarni hissed. His voice sounded like parchment rubbing together, like dry insects. He was so eager to pay the price. What price? What are you talking about? Priya trembled, backing toward the exit. This house, Suryagarh, Kulkarni said, gliding toward her. It was built on debt. It demands balance. Our guests come bearing something they crave, and they leave something of equal value. I don't understand. Priya hit the wall. She'd gone the wrong way. This was not the exit. Rohan wanted success, power. He was willing to sacrifice anything or anyone. Kulkarni tilted his head. A dry, cracking sound came from his neck. But you, Priya, you are not like him. You crave nothing. You just carry sorrow. Priya's fear was replaced by an icy dread. The air was forced from her lungs. What sorrow? You know, Kulkarni whispered. His voice became almost gentle, a revolting tenderness. He raised one long, skeletal finger. About your sister, Anaya. The pool accident. You were supposed to be watching her. No. Priya gasped. No one knew that. It was her secret. Her guilt, the weight she carried every single day, buried beneath her smile and her marriage. How did you... Tugarni interrupted. It tastes, it smells, and it hungers. He smiled, a ghastly gesture that stretched the slash on his face. Dinner is not over, Priya. We have served the appetizers, the petty desires. Now it is time for the main course, the real feast. No, Priya shrieked, trying to push him away. Her hands passed through only a cold fog. Kulkarni laughed, a sound like rustling dry leaves. Rohan paid with his ambition. He will have his success, but he will never be full again. He will be forever hungry. Where is he? He is in the kitchen. Kulkarni sighed, his voice casual, like the others, preparing for the next party. He is part of the house now, just like the 10 guests. Priya suddenly understood. The 10 guests, they hadn't left. They were the dinner, what she saw. On the plates, the man's failed career, the woman's lost beauty, Rohan's ambition. All of it cooked, seasoned, and served, devoured by the eyeless, mouth-sewn servers. And me? She whispered, her body rigid with horror. What am I? You? Kulkarni hissed, his face close to hers. The stench of metal and rot and guilt poured from him. You are a special dessert. Your dish is regret. Guilt, the purest meal of all. he gestured. The eyeless servers with their sewn mouths emerged from the very floor. They glided, surrounding her. They were not carrying plates. They were carrying thick black thread and long, curved silver needles, the kind used for sewing burlap sacks. "Do not worry," Kulkarni whispered, melting back into the shadows. "Here, no one has to eat alone. You will serve very well." The Chakadar stepped forward. He held a single silver but it was not empty. On it, gleaming wickedly in the candlelight, was a small metal object. It was the butterfly necklace she had dropped by the pool the day Anaya died. Priya opened her mouth to scream, but no sound came out. Only the thick stench of old spices, of metal, and of eternal regret. The sound was swallowed, smothered by the smell of rotting lilies and old iron. Absorbed by the silence of the house, the Chakaida raised the silver needle, and the real feast began. Thanks for watching until the end. What was your favorite part? Please let me know in the comments below. If you found this video helpful, don't forget to leave a like, share it, and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss my future content. Your support is my biggest motivation. Thank you all so much.